What happened in the Celtics, Warriors, Raptors, and Cavaliers games on Sunday? Can the Timberwolves make it rain on the Rockets again? How did the Pelicans so thoroughly dominate the Trailblazers? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. I am joined by Dave DuFour to begin this three-part segment of a podcast. Glad to have you on, Dave. Let's break down the four games that played today.
Okay, let's do that.
Boston, Milwaukee, kind of crazy. It went down to the wire. Milwaukee somehow pulled it out. Thoughts?
I thought they got a little sloppy in the second half. They had that big lead, and it just felt like not only were they sloppy, but a little bit lazy. And Boston was not. I mean, Jaylen Brown might have been the best player on the court today. He was just fantastic. And I thought that his effort and Boston's effort overall really made it what shouldn't have been a close game. Bledsoe was pretty bad today. I thought, they were much better with Dellavedova out there. It's now 2-2. And that doesn't mean it's anyone's series, though, because in historically, in a 7-game series in the NBA, when you're tied 2-2, the higher seeded team has won 79% of the series.
Oh, is that right? Huh? I bet you that must be the game 5 is also the winner of 79% of the winning series.
It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me.
Wow, because I would think that Boston is a little bit in trouble. They're getting production out of Jaylen Brown and out of Tatum in a really nice way to see these young guys really just sort of not be fazed by the pressure. But it's what's interesting, I think, also about this is that there really are no more blowouts when you have decent teams going at each other because of the 3-ball. We are seeing some blowouts. We did see a few in this playoff series, but it almost feels like back in the day where you would have seen some teams panic, like later in the third quarter, early fourth, take some bad threes, and all of a sudden the game's over. Just the whole thing shifts. Now they hang around, and then they hit a three, they get fouled, whatever, and it changes the whole complexion of the game, which I guess is good, right? It's more entertaining.
It's fun. And, we always say basketball is a game of runs. When the offense starts clicking and the defense is going well, and then the offense feeds off the defense, and good defense creates good offense because you usually get transition opportunities off turnovers and things like that. So it makes sense that you can have these wild swings.
Yeah. And then the Bledsoe thing, I think, are you now seeing what I've been kind of saying for a long time about him? Or maybe you agree with me, I don't even know.
I've agreed with you. I thought it was a short-term decision, and I definitely think it was a little bit of a mistake. But
he's just not that guy, right?
Right, he's not. I get what they were going for, but I don't know if it was a good move.
Yeah. So who knows if they can figure out some rotations and get some better play from that position with somebody else? Then they could be one of those 20% that actually pulls it out. But we'll see. The next game on the docket was Golden State and San Antonio, and San Antonio won by 13 relatively easily. Again, it's just sort of a malaise of being up 3-0 and on the road and, in the face of a hostile crowd.
Well, it's Fiesta right now in San Antonio. So let's just say Fiesta is undefeated, to my knowledge. I think it was a little bit of everything, right? Like a little bit of that, we're up 3-0 and we're not taking them seriously. Quite a bit of Spurs culture in this win. They came out of the gate. They were defending as hard as they always do. And you kind of know what you're going to get from a Spurs team. And when you're that consistent with your effort, you're going to beat teams better than you sometimes. And I think that was just one of those cases. And then LaMarcus was great. And Manu Ginobili had an amazing fourth quarter. He was just incredible, right down to hitting what could have been his final shot in San Antonio, a wide open three with it was like 10 seconds left or something like that. But it was just, it was perfect. And, it was a lot of fun to watch, actually, to see, how weak the Warriors can look when they don't have Steph Curry.
That's exactly what I thought. I really feel like their offense is challenged. And I was looking at some numbers to try and see if there was any stats to back it up as far as even passing. And the passing is down in the playoffs compared to what it was when he was playing with them. But then again, so is the pace is a little bit lower. So it's almost like it might be a wash. But there's just something about the way their offense moves now, which is a little bit like OKC-ish. More so than it used to be.
It's exactly what they look like. Yeah,
and I suppose that's the point, right? Sort of like Durant's probably feeling that he has to do it, which is, by the way, exactly how they felt. But imagine feeling that way in OKC when you also have Russ. So you're kind of feeling like, well, I got to be the man, and Russ got to be the man, and that's what was.
That's why they always took turns.
Yeah.
That's why they were always taking turns.
Yeah. And so now there's no turn taking necessarily, although you got Clay, and Draymond's not going to really be that guy either. So I kind of see the mindset, but they're just so much of a better team anyway that they would benefit more from that beautiful ball movement and stuff. But again, this is over next game, right?
Probably. Well, let me ask you a question. Who on that team, when Steph's not out there, how many guys scare you when they have the ball on the perimeter as a shooter? There's two, Clay and KD. That's it.
Yes.
That's all the shooting
off the dribble. Yes.
And off the dribble, one.
Right.
I mean, Nick Young might get hot for like a quarter, but he's not a legitimate threat.
And he's not playing even that much, right?
Right. Quinn Cook can shoot, catch and shoot at least, and he's okay off the dribble, but he doesn't scare you in the same way as Steph Curry.
Yeah. Iggy's looked very spry.
He has. And he tanks his whole season now. It's really smart. You spend the whole regular season saying, "Oh man, I think Andre Iguodala might be washed finally," and then he comes out in the playoffs and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I've just been hanging."
The classic, just take your time and get healthy and hang out and chill. And then he looks much more bouncy than anybody else. He's smiling out there. It's hilarious. Everyone else is beat up and nicked and so all sorts of stuff. So I would think this is over in Golden State in Oakland the next game, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Let's go on to the next series, Toronto and Washington, a spirited game. And Washington is somehow back in this series. It kind of felt like they didn't like each other, and it wasn't working really well. The Raptors were up 2-0. I don't know, man. I've got a sort of a bad feeling about this. And by the way, Washington wins with Bradley Beal fouling out.
On a garbage foul call.
There was contact and the guy fell and it was down low on the body, and I don't know, what are you going to do?
If it was anything, it should have been an offensive foul. Bradley Beal was standing there with his arms in the air for about 3 seconds before was it DeRozan?
I don't even
ran
know.
into him. To me, it was a play on. You let it go.
The problem is the guy fell and probably traveled or whatnot. He shouldn't lose the ball on that either. So it was rough. I mean, listen, there's no way to win. And hey, they won, so at least there was some redemption on that anyway. But
sure. But we can't normalize that kind of bad call.
Okay,
just because they won, it was a bad.
I don't know. I don't know how bad. I mean, there was contact, right? I mean, and there was a little hippie in there. So
I think he was pretty clean.
Oh, well, listen, I think that's a decision whether he wants to play on, but I don't think you can say that in other circumstances that wouldn't be a foul. I mean, again, they swallowed the sixth foul.
Referees are calling because the guy fell. That's the foul that they call, right? It's sort of like the block charge, right? It's going one way or the other. If a guy hits the ground, they're calling something, even on stuff that probably just shouldn't get called.
But even more important, what you said, but in the past, is that if you only get in the offensive foul if you fall, you're not getting it any other way. So, all right, fair enough. They got in there, and but it ended up working out okay for Washington, which is also kind of a bad omen now for the Raptors because they should have been able to take control of that game and win going away without Bradley Beal out there, and they didn't. And it was a sort of an ISO fest down the stretch.
That was exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. They've reverted back to their old habits.
And what's going to be amazing is what's going to happen. Let's just say that Toronto doesn't win this series now. What's the first thing that's going to happen the day after the season's over?
I don't know. There's no way Casey's getting fired.
I'm telling you, it's going to get to double digits, right? We're talking about Stotts now, and we're going to have 10 coaches hired this year at least.
I think Stotts is safer than Neil O'Shea.
You mean than Dwayne Casey? Oh, you mean Neil O'Shea?
I'm saying
in interesting.
I think Terry Stotts did a very good job this year with what is a severely flawed roster. That's not a roster that's built for the modern NBA.
Yeah.
And he made the most of it all season. Now, you can also say he just got swept out of the playoffs, but he got swept out of the playoffs by Anthony Davis,
and Drew Holiday playing like he stuck his finger in a socket and playoff Rondo. We're doing a video on playoff Rondo for tomorrow.
Good. That's going to be a good video.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like we don't have to even mention AD because all the assists are just going to be to AD anyway. So you'll get by osmosis, you'll get the sense that AD has been amazing. Although it turns out of the 40, together Drew Holiday and AD have hit like 94 field goals in the series, and Rondo's assisted on like 31 of them. So it's like 31% of their shots are all from Rondo passes, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, he's been insane. But so back to the Toronto. I do think it is problematic that they've reverted back to their old ways, and they paid the price for it. They're missing Fred VanVleet.
They are,
I think, but I mean, I don't even want to think about what would happen if they lose this series.
Yeah, it would be devastating because this is the year, and at the very least, get out of the frickin' first round and don't be up 2-0 and lose it. But it's interesting, and Washington might kind of start liking each other now that they've won a couple of games, and that could change a lot of stuff because John Wall is a bad man. He made some dunks tonight that were statements on top of statements of a lot of stuff, and then Beal was also just another sick individual.
Yeah.
So, we just watched the Cavaliers and the Pacers game. I got to tell you, listen, I like the underdog. I cheer for the underdog. LeBron is never the underdog, so I find myself sort of rooting for that. I want to see Rudy. And it was kind of hard to believe they had a 3-point lead with about 4.5 minutes to go, whatever that was, at home, kind of needed to play it out. They were still doubling Oladipo, who wasn't shooting well, but they were still getting good shots and good looks to some degree. And then it fell apart.
Yeah, they got a little tight, and again, man, they went to a little bit more isolation. And I think Sabonis should have maybe stayed in the game. They were actually very successful with Sabonis and Thad Young out there. I thought that look in particular was really bugging Cleveland on both ends of the court. And going back to Miles Turner, I understand Miles Turner in a vacuum is a better player than Sabonis, but I just think what Sabonis was doing, especially in that fourth quarter defensively, was really important and what they needed. But the biggest problem is that they just weren't scoring at the end of the game, and it was because of all the isolation. They weren't playing their brand of basketball that got them to the point where they actually had a chance to go up 3-1 in this series. And that's going to happen, and they're a young team. But Indiana's been one of my favorite teams to watch all season long. They're a lot of fun. Tonight was actually a really great example of it. And they're not fun like the Warriors are fun, where they're really going, where it's just they're just pounding teams. Indiana's fun if and as coaches, we're kind of nerds about this kind of stuff. But when I'm watching them play defense and they're, there's all that help and communication and they're hounding the ball and they're switching and doing all this stuff. And then they'll get a turnover and they get out and run and they're hitting the guy on the break. And it's just fun basketball. And like you said before, they're the underdog.
Yeah.
Victor Oladipo is their best player, and is Victor Oladipo a top 20 player?
Let me say this. Here's the thing, because he didn't shoot well, and I don't think he's shooting well for the series, but he is making moves, that might open up a tip dunk for a teammate. He is blowing by whenever he wants to. He blows by whoever is guarding him one-on-one. They cannot guard him one-on-one. And that's exciting.
LeBron.
What's that?
Including LeBron. And that's exciting because here's a kid who didn't have that kind of confidence until this year. And he probably didn't even have that kind of confidence until now, all of a sudden. Even in the regular season, he was doing it. But this is back you up. I'm just going to go right by you or pull up for a three. It's really that's what's so great as far as that story goes because of where he's come from. And now, I tweeted earlier tonight, I'm old enough to remember when people questioned whether he deserved that $21 million contract. Here's a guy who is a legit go-to playoff performer, and they just about had it. They were still doubling him, and it's a nightmare scenario for the Cavs either way. But the freaking Pacers are just not attacking it as well as they could. And that's going to fall on McMillan to figure out how to do it better. Now, they did follow what I had shown in the video, what I did on this, where they started screening with Collison. Because if the first pass goes to Collison off of a double team on Oladipo, then you have something. Whereas before, they were throwing it to Miles Turner, and they were throwing it to even Sabonis, who's doing better today, but they were throwing it to him way out in the perimeter, and that was too far for him to do much. That was working okay, but then, they just kind of get stuck. They throw it to the corner too often, and then they get stuck there.
clock running down. Frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, Cleveland, they got lucky. I can't help but just feel that they got lucky tonight.
How tired did LeBron look?
Exhausted. I mean, he played 46 minutes.
Yeah. He got the ball taken away from him by Lance. And it was like, whoa. And so did Kevin Love, by the way.
How about Kevin Love, man, was just downright looked unplayable tonight. Thad Young has owned that matchup at both ends of the court and just has made him look like a little kid when Thad is defending him. I mean, Thad ripped a ball away from him, and I just thought, okay, well, Kevin Love just needs to retire. It was bad. And, I can't help but think that thumb is bothering him.
Oh, for sure.
I've never seen him lose a ball like that. I've never seen him look that out of it when the ball was in his hands. He lost the ball a couple times tonight. So I'm thinking that thumb is really bothering him. So, I don't want to sit and make excuses for the man because he doesn't need them. But the truth is, I thought they should have sat him, especially down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree, and it's going to be an interesting thing. The Game 5 is going to be pivotal, and we'll see what happens there. But there's no question that Indiana has had better, longer stretches of good basketball, and the Cavaliers are kind of hanging on by the seat of their pants here, just sort of like making just enough plays. How about that bomb by J.R. Smith in the first half from 80 feet? Like, that doesn't go in, and the game is completely different too. In theory, they also missed the travel. They had this rolling around thing at the very end, which is probably too little, too late at that point. With Lance trying to get a jump ball, I could see why the foul was called there versus the jump ball before that or after that. But Jeff Green slides his pivot foot. People wanted to argue that the referees just can't see all of that happening in real time with all the knowing they want to foul. I don't know. That was pretty. It seemed pretty crucial. They should see that one.
Yeah. I don't know, man, but it's tied up 2-2, and this. I don't know. I have no confidence in Cleveland. I think Ty Lue's done some weird stuff. He doesn't have a rotation at all.
Yeah.
Tristan Thompson to me was very effective tonight. I think he only played 7 minutes for the whole game, but he was effective when he was out there. For me. If Kevin Love's giving you nothing on offense, which he did tonight, you might as well have Tristan Thompson out there because at least he's going to set screens and he's going to keep Sabonis and Thad Young off the glass, at least to a certain extent. And Kevin Love wasn't doing any of that. Meanwhile, Tristan Thompson's just sitting on the bench. And I think that was a huge mistake. I think they got lucky. They dodged a bullet. And they may very well wind up winning this series because they won tonight. But yeah, I have no confidence in them going forward. I mean, when they play, the Pacers have played a little bit above themselves, right? A little bit out of their mind, and above what they are as a team. I don't think Cleveland's that much better than them.
Right. They just have LeBron.
Right.
So,
and that's the difference, right?
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Thank you, Dave, for coming on. We got 2 more guests to come up here in our next couple segments. So stay tuned, sports fans. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
If you catch me at the border,
if you're listening to this and feeling a bit old and out of touch with this young generation of ball players, you might be in the age range where we commonly see sexual performance issues. Did you know that 40% of men by age 40 struggle from those dreaded 2 letters, ED? You know what they stand for, and now there's real science to turn your fortune completely around. 4hims.com is your solution, a complete one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness for men. They have well-known generic equivalents to the name brand prescriptions to help you combat ED. In fact, one pill, starting with a V, just came off its patent recently, a real game changer. So avoid those embarrassing doctor's visits with all the invasive questions. Instead, get erectile without the dysfunction. Go to 4hims.com/CoachNickED and get Hims for a month for just $5 while supplies last. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or pharmacy. So don't wait. That's 4hims, FORHIMS.com/CoachNickED. See website for full details and get back on the path to sexual performance. So now we turn to Jerry Zagoda, who is the Star Tribune beat writer for the Timberwolves. And Jerry, I think you might be a little bit happier today than you were the day before.
Well, when you do this job, it really doesn't matter, although it is refreshing that, one, there was a playoff game at Target Center for the first time since 2004, and that they actually sent people home happy, which it's always nice to see people with smiling faces. And it was weird to kind of feel a playoff game in here. And they put white towels on all 18,000 seats, and people were waving them, and there was sort of an intensity, and it was fun.
So let's see. I take it you were there the last time they had a playoff game. Was it the same kind of atmosphere, or was it even more intense because of the weight?
Well, that was the Western Conference Final, so that was different. That was Garnett and Sprewell and Cassell against Shaq and Kobe, and
oh wow,
yeah, I'm not even sure. I think I was there, but it was so long ago I don't even really remember that game. I just remember those series. I was back when they beat Denver, and then they had a 7-gamer with Sacramento with a great 7th game, and then they went and played the Lakers and might have even beaten them if Cassell hadn't gotten hurt. But yeah, it's amazing to think how long ago it was, that some of these guys on this team were, in grade school back then.
And not only that, but like the style of play is so different now that it doesn't probably even resemble what they were doing back then. What do you think the key was in Game 3 for them to get back in the series? And by the way, are they back in the series, or is that a mirage?
Well, we'll find out tomorrow night. At least it's interesting, and there's some intrigue to it. I mean, if they've gone down 3-0, they might have won Game 4, but so what? Probably history tells you you're not going to come back and win 4 games. And I think the difference last night maybe wasn't so much X's and O's. It was just Mike D'Antoni just before the Rockets practice this morning was saying, we just didn't match. They were desperate. It's human nature. They had to win. Fans were fired up, and that they didn't match the same sort of intensity and desperation that the Wolves had. That they were up for a while, and then the Wolves just put together end of the third, beginning of the fourth, just kind of put them away, and which is a little bit surprising because they've played 7 times now this season. If you include the regular season, that was the first time they've beaten them, and the first couple games, the 3-point disparity was just incredible. I think it was like 22-6 one game, and another one was really lopsided. But in the playoffs here, where you get a chance to adjust, they've been actually competitive. The math hasn't worked against them so much. One game on last night, they were 15. They made 15. Rockets made 15. I think they took 14 fewer than the Rockets. And I think in the first game, they only had 2 fewer makes than Houston. So that sort of has evened out, and if that continues, at least puts them on a competitive playing field with the Rockets a little bit.
So does that feel like that's one of the biggest keys for you right now, is the 3-point disparity or non-disparity for keeping them in the games?
Well, if you want, anyone who watched the regular season, because it was just every time they played in the regular season, you just say, man, this is the worst matchup they could get in the playoffs, just because of the simple math. 3 is worth more than 2. Mm-hmm. Rockets, I didn't even realize it until after Game 2, but they shot 51 or 52 in Game 2. That was an NBA record. They do it so frequently, you just forget. They're in kind of this record-breaking territory, and the Wolves aren't built that way. They're built around their best 3-point shooter might be Towns, Butler, Wiggins. They're not natural 3-point shooters, and every time they play the Rockets, at least in the regular season, you just said, hey, they can't keep up with them just because of, like I said, the simple math. And if they're going to do it in the playoffs, maybe the familiarity and the nature of a 7-game series changes that a little bit, where they get a little bit better. And although PGA Tucker before practice today just said, it's not them, it's us. We're just not making shots, but they're still taking them.
They are. Well, let's move on. I did a video about Karl Anthony Towns, and we had seen how they were shutting him down by being really physical with him, and really maybe looking like he was shying away from that contact. Did you? He played better. He definitely did better. He had 18 points and he got 16 rebounds. Do you feel like he handled that physicality better and was able to get through it?
Yeah, I think maybe the home court helped, but he was a little more active, and he did get on the move a little bit more. They wanted him to move. He was trying to get. He wasn't just kind of getting the ball and just getting stuck with it. He was trying to because when he's at his best, he's playing both inside and out, working his way to the perimeter, faking that 3 or even a long 2, and then getting his guy up in the air and getting down and. I always remember him just, coming down the lane and slamming it. He'd have those, a couple times a game, and he didn't have anything like that the first 2 games. And he didn't have one exactly like that last night, but he was more active. He was getting around the rim. He was, on the run, trying to, that little hook of his. And, they want him to move more, and they want him to run the floor harder. It's a little bit difficult when you're running against a guy like Clint Capella, who runs so well. But he certainly played with more movement and more energy than than he did when he just didn't look like he knew what to do when they were switching everything. They had the smaller guy, but then they sent a big guy too after him, and he just couldn't figure it out. And he's 22 years old. This is his first playoff series. He's not used to this sort of intensity, and it's natural. I think that it probably takes him a while to figure it out. We'll see if in Game 4 if he's progressing towards doing that.
While you've been in the scrums and interviewing stuff, have you heard him? Has he expressed this feeling of being a playoff rookie and not really knowing what to expect, or is he just trying to give you the line? Oh, it's nothing different. I can handle it. That kind of thing.
No, not really. I mean, he doesn't say it's bewildering him, but he says it is completely different than the regular season. He will admit that much, and you ask him, is he getting frustrated? He goes, "There's no time in this to get frustrated." So, he says the right things, and the Rockets were very intent the first couple games. They got 2 All-Stars, take both of them away, and Butler just a lot of times I think he's expending a lot of energy trying to guard Harden on the one end, but he thinks so much of himself as a defensive player. I think sometimes he kind of maybe thinks it's noble to defer offensively, and he knew they were in a situation last night they had to win, and Butler sure came out aggressive, and he had the 28 points, but from the very beginning you could tell it wasn't just going to be the one end. He was going to defend Harden and kind of lead his team on the other, and I think by doing that, he got going early, and then Towns was just really patient. I don't think he took a shot in the first quarter, didn't do a whole lot in the first half, and then just kind of waited for the classic wait for the game to come to me, and it started to more after halftime, and they had a stretch where there, I remember what the number was, but to end the third quarter and begin the fourth, it was very lopsided. They went on a big run, which is telling because this team hasn't really finished quarters well. They didn't finish halftime going into halftime well at all, and then the third quarter they did, and that sure helps a lot.
It sure does. And what really helped a lot was production from a player they probably weren't expecting as much as they did, which is Jeff Teague. And I tweeted it out after the first couple of games that I kind of felt like Jeff Teague holds them back. He's the guy who, and I'm hoping maybe you can change my mind on this, where I don't know. He just seems like the kind of guy who would be a good backup point guard on a really good team. But when you got to rely on him as a starter, it's just not going to get you where you want to go ultimately, where it seems like, the conference finals or beyond. What do you make of his game? A huge game. He was blown by Chris Paul. He was hitting threes. Is that an anomaly, or is this the kind of thing where I shouldn't feel as negatively as I do?
Well, your opinion is opposite of the Tibbs. So,
okay.
That's one of the reasons they traded Rubio and got Teague, because he thought he was built for the playoffs, and maybe that's who Teague has been around. But, Tibbs always cites the fact that, he's been in the playoffs every year. He's gone deep. He's never been to a finals, but he's got to the Eastern Conference once. Now, granted, that was with an Atlanta team that also had Paul Millsap and was pretty talented, but I think that's the reason he went. And it's funny because I think, he never publicly said it, but I think one of the reasons Tibbs ended up trading Rubio away was he just didn't think you could win with a guy who couldn't, you didn't have to defend at the end of games. And now Ricky, 8 years in the league or whatever it is proving everybody wrong by doing it in Utah. But I think, that's why he went and basically swapped Teague for Rubio, was for the playoffs. And, he said, you tell there's sort of a difference of opinion in the way they play, because he said this a couple times, and he said it again on Friday, but Teague said, we need to play faster. We need to play, with more freely, and we haven't been doing that. And he helped them do that a little bit last night. And I mean, he does what Tibbs wants his point guard to do. He's a good pick and roll player, break down the defense, kick the ball. Even though they don't have great natural shooters, that's what he wants them to do. And he was really good last night. And now we'll see if he can do it again in Game 4.
Yes, I think that's the challenge that CP3 is going to, assign to himself, and we'll find out if he'll let that happen again. We'll see. Yeah, fair enough. I'm now I raised my eyebrow. Heck, Drew Holiday completely changed my opinion of his game in this last series, and so I'm looking forward to Teague doing more of that. And certainly, I feel like people who might agree with me on that side are people who live in Atlanta or in Indiana who might have been frustrated for those years. But it's a great chance for him, and we've seen. I guess the other point is that we've seen Tibbs be able to develop point guards and get a lot of great production out of that position.
I guess it depends what your standards are. If you're in Atlanta and you want to go to the finals or something, but for the Wolves to get to the playoffs and be in a competitive series for Wolves fans, they'll take that to start with,
Okay.
to begin with, because it hasn't happened for so damn long.
Great point. So we'll all enjoy this, and we'll see if they can make it more of a series going into it. And Jerry, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
I'm glad you had me. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks. And now let's bring on Mason Ginsberg, who covers the New Orleans Pelicans for the Bourbon Street Shots website. Mason, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, we just finished, what was, I think most people would consider a surprising sweep of the Portland Trailblazers by the Pelicans. What happened? How did this happen? Did anybody think this was going to happen?
We had writers, I should say, for our site that thought Pelicans could win this series, but I don't think no one saw a sweep coming. Let's just be clear about that. This was pretty shocking, and before the series, I would have called it a coin flip. But they were separated by one game in the standings. The Pelicans have had the best player in the series, and so you could have gone either way. But again, this was pretty crazy, and credit to the coaching staff for developing a game plan that really worked like a charm. Even this last game yesterday, where the Blazers clearly played well offensively, they were still able to keep their best player, Damian Lillard, out of his element. And CJ got his, and Aminu shot very well from the 3-point line, but very, very well planned for. And you really can't say enough about the series Drew Holiday had on both ends of the floor.
For sure. This is my chance, I guess, to try and explain why everyone was freaking out about my video on how they were defending Damian Lillard. Because from a coaching perspective, when you went through the footage and you saw how many, what you would classify as good shots out of this, doubling of Lillard on the pick and roll, at my whole point, and I think I was in a hurry, and I just sort of, I don't know, there was definitely a tone that I'm not even happy with now, like that was dismissive, but, as a coach from Terry Stotts' standpoint, you'd have to just shrug and be like, you know what, those are good shots. We're going to have to, that's what we should be getting from them, and they just couldn't hit them. I guess the anger I experienced from that was interesting because everybody on that side is like, well, of course we want Nurkic to shoot point-blank shots at the rim, and of course we want Aminu to shoot wide open shots. What were your thoughts on that?
I think the game plan was excellent. Obviously, I mean, you're going to have guys. I just kind of looked at the numbers before I came on, and I looked at it yesterday and then again today about ignoring context of shot quality and how open players were. Just looked at how well the Blazers shot from 3-point range relative to what you'd expect. So I took the last 3 years of 3-point data. 1 year's too variable. So I took 3 years. Because guys improve, so Aminu's a great example. You don't want to take his career numbers because he's a better shooter than he was in the first part of his career. Mm-hmm. And so they made about 3 last 3-pointers over the course of the series than you would expect. And I realize Aminu, and Evan Turner, those guys were wide open for the entire series because that was the game plan. But Aminu is pretty often shooting when he's wide open. So it was a little more exacerbated with this series, but it is what teams are going to live with that pretty frequently when you're playing against guys like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. And I do also agree that Nurkic missed a few bunnies throughout the series at the rim. But you've got some pretty versatile interior defenders in Anthony Davis and Nico Mirotic, who his play on defense this series I think blew a lot of people away. And I think that was less of a drastic improvement on his part than people starting to realize that he can play defense. He's not a bad defender. And so while there were some misses, of shots that some players maybe typically make, Aminu shot well above his expectation for the series, and Lillard shot well below his expectation for the series. And that's just, that's small sample sizes. That kind of thing will happen. But I think overall the defensive game plan worked as intended.
Yeah, and I lament the fact that I didn't give enough credit to someone like Drew Holiday on the defensive end, although I did mention it in the first video I did on them, which was, it's kind of startling to me. I guess I hadn't paid enough attention or close attention to the Pelicans this year because all the people on Twitter were yelling at me that, of course, this is how Drew Holiday's been all year. It's a revelation to me on both ends of the floor. We all know Anthony Davis is the best player on the floor, but I think that Drew had an argument in this series.
Yeah, he was. That was what won the Pelicans series. That he was the second best player on the floor. Damian Lillard was a borderline top 5 MVP candidate, and Holiday thoroughly outplayed him. And no one, I don't even think any even the most optimistic Pelicans fan would not have expected that to happen and to happen so drastically. And so, he's been fantastic all season long. He's spent the most time. I think I saw I can't remember where I saw the stat, but he's spent the most time in the league guarding the opponent's best player. And to have the success that he had this season on defense while having that burden, mostly because Solomon Hill was injured for most of the season, so each one more was the starting three. And he's a good defender, but not against guys who are going to be four inches taller than him. And Drew took on those assignments, and he was really excellent. And one other point that I've made throughout the year not throughout the year, but I made it in the playoffs that I hadn't really given a lot of thought to was, you can say whatever you want about how Rajon Rondo isn't a great NBA player anymore, but the fact that he was the Pelicans point guard and relieved some of that burden off of Drew, I think that as much as anything really helped him have the year that he had on the defensive end of the floor. Because it's a tough task to do as much as he would have been asked to do as the team's primary ball handler, distributor, offense creator, as well as defending the other team's best player. So I just think the Pelicans were had some nice foresight in what their plan was this year.
For sure. I think I would argue that it allows Drew Holiday to play his best position, which is, combo guard / shooting guard more. It just feels like that was working. By the way, he still averaged over 6 assists per game in this playoff series. Mm-hmm. And then you throw in Rondo is 13.3 per game. And it's a lot of good passing, a lot of setting up teammates and making it really hard. Then again, a lot of those passes, I joked yesterday that the Blazers' game plan of making Anthony Davis into a dunker was really working well. I think he must have broken the record for alley-oops in a series, don't you think?
It is fun. Like the Pelicans do kind of make you pull your hair out on the number of full court passes they try sometimes. It's just unnecessary, and it either turns into, most of the time, is either a turnover or risks injury for AD. But man, in the half court, or in transition, they've really perfected. Once if you can at least make it a half court pass instead of a full court pass, they've done a great job in getting AD into positions where he can score easily. And the Blazers just don't really have anyone who can defend a play like that, and Pelicans took advantage.
Yeah, I remember there's one in my mind where Aminu is on him, and he's near the low post, and I think Rondo just throws it from half court as up at the air, and he just spins and then dunks it. And some of these passes are not even good, like they're not even close. Yep. And he's like reverse dunking alley-oops. I might just do a video on all of his alley-oops because there had to have been 7 or 8, I would think, maybe more. Maybe like each game there was a few. So I just think it's a really interesting thing, which we now have to pivot towards looking, towards the Warriors. And, I'm trying to picture, can Drew Holiday go for 27 points a game and shoot 5% against Clay? Like, I don't know how that works. We don't know if Steph's going to come back. And then I can't even picture in my mind's eye what KD and the AD matchup looks like. Can you fill us in on the regular season how that worked?
Yeah. So let's be clear. As good of a matchup as the Blazers are for the Pelicans, that's how bad of a matchup the Warriors are. Because the one thing that Pelicans will struggle against is big wings because they don't have that. If Solomon Hill had a full healthy season under his belt, I would count on him to be at least a competent defender against Durant. He wouldn't stop him, of course, but he would be good enough to hold his own and give the Pelicans maybe some sort of fighting chance. But the Pelicans lost the first 3 games of the series against the Warriors this year. They were usually good to hang pretty close for a half or 3 quarters, and then in crunch time they just fell apart. And the 4th game of the season was one of the key wins that got them in position to get the 6th seed instead of the 8th seed. Where they went on, obviously without Steph, but they went on the road to Golden State on a Saturday night and got a key victory. And clearly, Golden State, do they have anything to play for at that point? No, they're locked into the 2 seed. But they were, Clay, KD, Draymond, they all played 30, 35 minutes, and so it was a huge win. That being said, it's going to be very tough for the Pelicans to match up with this team with or without Curry in a 7-game series.
And then who was guarding AD most? Would you remember if it was Draymond or KD?
It's usually Draymond. I imagine over the course of the series he'll get a bunch of different looks to keep him honest and try to do whatever they can to slow him down. But I guess it depends who they go with in their starting 5. I wonder if they'll go with JaVale again. Seems like that could be a decent matchup, but we'll see.
Yeah, I would anticipate JaVale maybe starting and then going from there. And then, we're going to see some small ball. I mean, this is going to be the future of the NBA with, guys like Anthony Davis at center and Draymond at center. And it should be interesting. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I would suspect that the Warriors will still have enough, but you'll have to come back on and fill us in on what's going on in that series.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think obviously you get to figure out how to play or who to play best against them. Obviously, maybe you like Solomon Hill's defense, but minutes with him and Rondo have just been terrible for the Pelicans because there's just not enough shooting, not enough offense creation. But we'll see how it plays out. I'm curious to see how the Pelicans decide to defend them.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Mason, and also you'll have to come back on again later to talk about the Boogie situation because that's interesting too.
It is, sure, and I appreciate you having me.
And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?